Hi, I'm Daphne, and this is the Fundraising Seminar. You're going to learn why fundraising is important, who we fundraise for, how to do it well, and some top tips.
So there are so many reasons that I could come up with for why fundraising is going to be a really important part of your time on committee and something which we would love for you to get involved in. Firstly, there is an undeniable biblical mandate for generosity. What I mean by this, it is written all over scripture that everything that we have is from God. So we are to be open-handed with what belongs to him. We can see how the early church was marked by generosity. Acts 2:44 says, and all the believers met together in one place, and they shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. And Paul continues to encourage this way of living in the church in Corinth. And 2 Corinthians 8 is full of encouragement about giving. He talks of an abundant joy which overflows into rich generosity and giving in accordance with what you have, not what you don't have. I could keep going. The Bible is full of encouragement for living generously and therefore the call to fundraise for those in need. Secondly, fundraising is key for us playing a role and having an impact in issues that are not in our proximity or that we do not have expertise in. For example, while poverty might be a local issue in some of our areas, when we consider global poverty and want to help, we're not in the best place to practically provide help. And so we might fundraise for Tear Fund, for example. Or if we want to tackle the issue of modern day slavery, we might choose to fundraise for IJM, as we don't have the expertise that IJM lawyers have. Through fundraising, we're able to play a role by resourcing experts and impacting globally. It can have a higher impact and a further reach. Finally, fundraising builds community. People are drawn to action, and you may find that your groups grow as a result of a fundraising event. People are united by a common goal, and through this you can help your community go down the spiral from awakening into action. This community could also be intergenerational. There's a great book called Gospel Patrons by John Reinhardt, and it's full of really encouraging stories of people who are moved by well-known missionaries and went on to fund their work, without whom none of it would have been possible. The book starts with an example of Joanna, a wealthy woman from Herod's courts, and she went on to help fund Jesus' ministry. There are people out there who have been blessed with money, and they're just waiting to be moved and mobilized for an important cause. So those are just three of the many reasons why we encourage you all to make sure that fundraising is a key element of your time on committee. Just think of the impact that your community and your group is going to be able to make. What if your community fundraised enough to see a community centre refurbished for a local youth group? Or what if you raised enough to equip people with a trade to lift themselves out of poverty? Or what if you raised enough money for an IJM rescue mission and you freed people from modern day slavery? The opportunities are endless.
So hopefully all that Ellie has said has encouraged us that we do really want to fundraise. But it is important that as we seek to fundraise, we seek to do so well. It is important to choose who we fundraise for carefully. Our money can have a huge impact, and therefore it really matters that we give our money to those who will steward it well. This is one of the ways that we engage critically in the complexities of injustice, and it's one of the ways we live out our value of doing justice well. In the early 2000s, there was a big financial investment behind the idea of harnessing the power of children at play to help sub-Saharan African communities access drinking water. Children's roundabouts were installed and connected to water pumps, and as the children played, the spinning motion propelled underground water into a storage tank for people to access on demand. This very simple idea caught the attention of celebrities, of governments and businesses, and there was tens of millions of pounds pledged and given to the initiative. However, in less than 2 years, UNICEF reported that the pumps were abandoned, broken and unmaintained. Rather than children playing on the roundabouts, women were left to push them in order to access the water, or children were being paid to do so. In fact, The Guardian calculated that children would need to play on the pumps for 27 hours a day to produce the minimum daily water requirement for the number of people play pumps were hoping to provide water for. The systems were expensive too. WaterAid concluded that you could build 4 conventional hand pump wells for the cost of 1 play pump. And so, play pumps, heralded as the new solution to water crisis in the region, wouldn't have addressed the issue of water scarcity nor poor water quality. This idea that had sparked so much enthusiasm in development and in philanthropist circles was a flop. And that story, that example, shows us that not all approaches to tackling poverty or other injustices will work or be appropriate. It is quite possible for us to be ineffective, wasteful, or even harmful in an effort to help. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17 says, "Learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, and plead the widow's cause." According to these words from Isaiah, seeking justice isn't always obvious or straightforward. Hence the need to learn to do good, developing wisdom and understanding. If we want to love people well, that means going beyond good intentions and instead thinking deeply and critically about our pursuit of justice, seeking out and learning from those with greater expertise and experience than we have. And this then should impact the way we give our money, and it should impact who we fundraise for. We haven't always got this right in Just Love. As we've grown, we've sought to change and continue in a posture of learning and listening. And we've come up with some core principles, ideas that we think are important to figuring out what it means to do justice well. The key principles of doing justice well are: does the charity think and work holistically? Do they tackle or engage with root causes? Do they do no harm? Do they provide opportunities for everyone to play their part? If they're a Christian organisation, are there ways of ensuring that God's grace transforms? And as an organisation, do they critically engage with learning, expertise, and evidence? And we also want to do justice well in how we fundraise. When we're fundraising, we want to avoid poverty tourism, where we treat poverty as a spectacle or an experience for the privileged to observe or briefly experience without fostering a genuine understanding or respect for those living in those conditions. If you've been around Just Love a while, you may have heard of groups in the past doing fundraisers such as Mean Bean, where you live off rice and beans for a week, or Live Below the Line, where students would choose to live below the poverty line for a week. These were, in many ways, impactful, but in many other ways unhelpful. I personally did the Live Below the Line challenge when I was in my first year, and we received some really valuable and really challenging feedback from some people who felt as if we were trivializing their incredibly hard-lived experience. And so doing just as well in how we fundraise looks like many things. It also looks like ensuring we use trigger warnings when necessary, as you advertise the event, at any points when you are communicating about the event, and during the event. It looks like thinking about how we tell stories of people who are impacted by injustice. Telling stories in a way that doesn't diminish the agency of the people impacted. And so, for example, our friends at IJM are careful to use the language of survivor rather than victim. It also looks like being sensitive about how we talk about money. Recognizing that each person in our community and each person that interacts with the work that we are doing will have a different relationship with money. If you haven't engaged with it before, Henry Nouwen's The Spirituality of Fundraising provides some challenging and helpful insights into how we view money and fundraising. And finally, we want to consider the accessibility of our fundraising efforts. For example, if we are choosing to do a physical challenge, then how might a physically disabled person engage?
Based on what we've heard from Judith about fundraising well and effectively, can you think of any excellent examples of charities or projects that do this well, or any that are ineffective or don't align with the doing justice well principles? So now that we've thought about the how and the why, here are some top practical tips for putting together your first fundraiser. Number 1, turn the fundraiser into a whole campaign. This means thinking about the events you're holding around the fundraiser and how you're using social media in the lead up. So we would encourage you to use your Just Lunches or your prayer events to cover the topic of the fundraiser. Make sure your community is informed on the topic and are moved to action through that. For example, if you were doing a Stand for Freedom fundraiser for IJM, you could do some Just Lunches informing people about the issue of modern day slavery, or even broader topics including fast fashion. Turn the fundraiser into a campaign. In that, you can use social media. Creativity is key. Ensure your fundraiser stands out by injecting fun and creativity into every aspect. Whether it's through unique challenges or interactive events, you can keep them interested. Before the fundraiser, develop a content calendar to plan how you're going to use social media in the lead up for the fundraiser, and that can engage a wider audience. Throughout the fundraiser, include regular updates, behind the scene glimpses, and interactive content that encourages sharing and participation. This keeps momentum going and the buzz around the event. Tip number 2 is to speak to people. Speaking directly to people can significantly boost engagement and donations. Make sure that you're ready to share your passion and key information about the cause. You can give like a little short vision pitch wherever you go, whenever you meet someone new. The third tip is visibility. It's super simple. Make your fundraiser noticeable through branding, social media hashtags, and promotional materials. If you're fundraising for a charity, more often than not, they'll be able to provide you with some key branding and logo materials that you can use in your social media campaigning. Tip number 4 is flexibility. You don't need to be married to one particular strategy, venue, date, or time. Make sure you're getting feedback from your community about what date, time, and place works, as well as your social media strategy. Make sure you're reviewing and revising things and you're going with what works best for your audience. Tip number 5 is planning. You're planning something similar to a wedding, then a pub trip. Make sure that you have a subcommittee who are able to delegate different responsibilities to. This is also a great opportunity for leadership development. You can also set a fundraising goal. Make sure you're being quite ambitious, but also realistic. So, for example, if you have 25 people who are involved in fundraising and they each ask 10 friends to give £10, that's 10 times 10 times 25, £2,500. That is your fundraising goal. Also, you want to make sure you're not neglecting the logistics. Make sure you plan all the details of the activity itself, from what donation platform you're using, like Just Giving, for example, the social media campaign, and how you're going to raise awareness for the cause. Create a project timeline or a table of ideas that is shared so you can keep track. Tip number 6 is to build a community around the fundraiser. Make sure you're extremely clear with the people you're inviting to participate in the fundraiser. People love to know exactly what they're getting themselves into. Make sure that there are opportunities for connection, whether that's during the in-person prep, so making signs together or resources, or during the event. Check in on people and make sure there's time for little celebrations along the way. You can also make it interesting. So there's a running challenge where people could dress up in different costumes, or they could dye their hair at different levels of donations they receive. You can also invite your churches and families to be involved with it. Make sure you have time for connection between communities, churches, and generations. Those are all your tips for putting on a successful fundraiser. All the best. We are praying for you.